Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 38 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasonowski, and I am the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rust Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We have quite the hefty pull list today because we got a couple double ups from last month where we missed this week. So we've got Ultimate Spider-Man number 8, Daredevil Woman Without Fear numbers 1 and 2, Wolverine Revenge number 1, Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter number 1 and 2, Morningstar number 5, and Locoman number 13.
That's right. I think that's going to be the most Marvel pulls we've ever had in one episode. It's a Marvel-heavy episode, which probably makes Katie sad in her soul, but hopefully will make all of you watchers and listeners happy. But if you enjoy this episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. Or you can find me personally on all the same socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm also on all the same socials at Katie Markham Pro.
And now, let's get into the news. So our news for this week involves publisher Mad Cave, who have been doing a many number of things since our podcast started. It feels like it's just been Mad Cave kind of greatly increasing their presence in the comic book space. Mm-hmm. And this is no change to that, as they have launched another new imprint off the heels of launching. Is it Amazing Comics was the imprint that they just launched? Astounding.
Because they have their kids imprint, and then they just started this other one.
Yeah, Amazing Comics. But then they also had their young adult one, Maverick.
Yeah,
I think that's the young adult one. So
is that different than their kids one? Was I just
they have Paper Cuts, which is for kids,
yes.
And then I think they have Maverick for young adults.
And then do you remember what Amazing Comics was like? What its umbrella is?
Why can't I think? It's for a person. Like it's for I think an ex-Marvel editor, I want to say, who's like setting up shop with it. It doesn't have like a theme. I think it's more about like
more like kind of that classic image imprint style.
Yeah,
where it's
exactly.
Like we've got a person at the helm of this.
Yeah, exactly. This one is more in the ballpark of their former imprints. That it's very themed. So this imprint is called Nakama Press. And this is going to be for manga, manhwa,
I was going to say, it sounds
manhwa, and manhwa, two of which I actually have not heard of. And the two of which I have not heard of are Chinese comics and French comics. The other two, if you're not aware, are Japanese and Korean, which I think are kind of the more popular ones currently. French being in there is a little bit interesting.
There's such a huge presence of French comics.
It's just interesting that it's like
weird to group them together, though. Yeah.
Yeah, with like three. Like, I guess for them it's more of like a foreign, and these are just where they look, but like it's lumped in with three, Asian presses, which makes a little bit more collaborative sense. But I'm going to read. There's a long kind of like letter, I guess, of announce. I'm going to read kind of just a short snippet of it here.
Sweet.
From Mark Irwin, who's the president of Mad Cave Studios. He said, "Our mission with Nakama Press is to connect readers with stories that resonate universally, transcending cultural boundaries. We believe in the power of storytelling to bring people together, and Nakama Press is our way of celebrating that through the incredible world of manga and graphic novels."
Interesting.
Go
ahead.
Yeah. So I think other than Dark Horse, I don't know if we have another major American publisher that really publishes like manga as well, unless I'm forgetting somebody. I know Dark Horse has done several like reprinting / like publishings of like popular mangas. I don't know if there's another
Oni
American
put out the Scott Pilgrim manga?
Oni did. Is Oni? I don't think Oni's an American company though.
Oh, wow.
I think Oni's
no idea.
I think Oni is an Asian company that just also.
I'd be remiss not to point out that both DC and Marvel have done manga versions of their things. There's the Spider-Man manga, the Batman manga, and the Justice League manga.
But I was kind of not counting that because
that's very fair.
But it's interesting to see Mad Cave be the next publisher step into this. Well, I guess I should backtrack. Antarctic Press is pretty well known for doing manga stuff, but in terms of the more major U.S. publishers, it's not super common for something that is extraordinarily popular currently. So maybe this will be big Mad Cave.
I wonder if they're going to publish them as like because Antarctic Press, they do it in like a traditional comic book format, right?
They do.
Uh,
They said, based on the fact that they said graphic novels and manga, my guess would be that it would be mainly like collected or larger size. But that does seem to be what moves manga in the US as far as I'm aware. I don't think
Yeah.
like the manga magazines are really big in the US. It's more like the collected editions
Right.
of things.
Like
But
the full volumes as opposed
yeah,
to like
but
the
that's actually a
shonen
really good question.
jumps.
Like I'd be interested to see if like they went with like if they actually tried to be the first, because I think they would be the first ones to do like the monthly manga format in the US,
Yeah.
because I don't think anybody does that, because that's like it's like an anthology. I guess wrong size, but I guess technically Manga Z from Antarctic Press does it, but like
Well, I think
you get my point, because like
wrong
they
size,
do.
but I think the shonen jumps are like essentially. This is my very outdated knowledge from when I was like briefly an anime kid.
That's more so than mine's all
Fair
like
enough.
peripheral friends and stuff. So
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that something like Shonen Jump is like a 2-inch thick, giant volume that would come out weekly or monthly. I don't remember what the schedule of it was, and it would have like a bunch of different mangas in there doing like the kind of
yeah,
single chapters, like single
that
issues
sounds correct.
essentially, and then they would release the volumes
Yeah.
that were just the one manga. And I
Yes.
think that's kind of what they go for with Manga Z at Antarctic Press, because that's like an anthology thing as well.
Yeah, that's why I was saying I think that's like the only thing that's like kind of in that. But
Yeah.
even then, like that's like you said, like it's typically like when you're talking about true, like a thick thing with
Yeah.
stories that have come. Whereas Manga Z is more in like the American anthology like mold, where it's like, okay, something's only going to be in there for 3 months or whatever,
Mhm.
and then we'll move on to the next thing, and then like they're all short, and it's like at most a 40 page. I think Antarctic Press's anthologies wildly range in page counts
Yeah.
from month to month, but like you're not getting more than like 40 pages. So
I'm also
I don't know.
curious
It's interesting to see what they do. Yeah.
because and this could be one of those, like, you know how nerds will have very niche definitions of things?
Yes,
that they're like,
absolutely.
no, this common thing, actually, you're using it wrong because this is what it is in its purest form.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if this is the case for manga and, like, mangakas, I think, are the people who create manga.
Yeah,
but I think manga is traditionally a one-person job. Like, it's a writer, artist.
They have, like, it is and it is, because like they have like whole studios. I think like it's one creative, but they have like a lot of people assisting them because they're like cranking out ridiculous amounts. Like I think they have like from what once they get big, like they basically only draw characters, and they'll have like people doing the backgrounds and people doing the speech bubbles, people doing all of that. So, but you are right that it's like a writer artist thing instead of like a
so I'm wondering if that's going to be part of it as well, or if they're just kind of going for like manga inspired things, or if they're going to be like, no, we are like giving a space for American mangakas.
I don't think it's American, because if you go there, like one, it's saying all these different places instead of because otherwise you'd probably just say manga inspired, because the difference between manga and manhwa is just one's in Korea and one's in Japan, and then like also it says from around the world. So my guess is that this is more like legit publishing from these countries and just releasing for America, maybe in the Dark Horse mold of literally just like printing things that haven't been printed in America. But yeah, to me it sounds like it's actually going to be from other countries rather than being American made, but I could be incorrect. We will see.
We will see. Yeah, no, this is very exciting. Yeah, I'm super excited to see what formats they're dropping, and I'm hoping that it's not just like kind of translations of stuff that's already out there. I hope that they're doing like original content for their line, because I think that would be a super cool thing for, like you said, Mad Cave to really get their foothold in and give kind of that springboard into the American market.
I agree. It's kind of an open. It's weird to say that manga, which is so saturated and so popular in the U.S., is like an open market, but like an American American publisher, I think it is an open market. So yeah, we'll see.
Super
But do you want to move on to our next bit of news?
Yes,
which is going to involve another American publisher, one of the biggest American publishers. We're going to talk about DC Comics.
My boys,
was it last episode or was it 2 episodes ago that we were talking about Marvel's QR codes?
Well, to answer your question, it was 2 episodes ago. To preempt your question, Do I want to hear this news? Am I going to be really upset and confused by this news?
Let me just read off our headline here.
Okay.
Now DC Comics does QR codes for DC All In and Absolute.
Okay, but like, what does it mean? Because
Do you want me to?
Okay, so when we talked about the QR codes, we did also talk about the fact that there's room for there to be potential for this.
Yep.
If you use it in a cool way. Stop saying
Are you ready
yep
for the
like
potential
that.
to be met?
No. Yeah.
So, customers that purchase any 4 DC titles each week, starting in the Absolute launch, which I think is in November, not mistaken, will receive a Justice League membership card. Week 1 is Batman, Week 2 is Superman, Week 3 is Wonder Woman, Week 4 is Justice League, and then November Week 1 is Darkseid. Each card will have a QR code on the back. And that QR code will take readers to exclusive previews of upcoming issues, plus behind-the-scenes material like character designs and more.
Okay, that is... First, to begin, that is worlds better than Marvel's.
Oh, yeah.
Like, worlds better immediately than Marvel's.
Yep.
And that's neat. I think that it's... I'm wondering distribution-wise what this will look like. Like...
It's interesting. I do remember a long time ago, because it's also in this art, but we talked about this a while ago, that they, for Absolute, are doing, like, bundle orders, where if you order, like, 25 copies of certain books, they get them for, like, much cheaper.
Yeah.
So I think it's, like, once you order 25, you'll get, like, a certain number of these cards, and you're supposed to... I guess it's the whatever it is divided by 4, because anybody who gets 4, like, your total order divided by 4, because then you'd be able to give it out to anybody who purchased 4 issues each week. By the way, though, 4 issues a week. How do they have 4 issues a week?
That's what I was thinking. I wonder if they're like all releasing on the same week, if they're doing Absolute, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman, and then if the cards are any indication, Justice League. I wonder if they're all going to
every week for a month. You also have Flash and Green Lantern.
Oh yeah, Flash and Green Lantern. So I would think that they're going to be releasing them all on the same week then.
Because but then how is this working for like? Because like that doesn't help them when like there's one for every week of the month. Like there's
it's every week of the month. Wait, what? That's so, 16 issues.
That's 16 issues
for the Absolute line, and I mean, I don't know, maybe they could be experimenting with the like with the Gotham City Sirens line. They're doing weekly releases for a month.
They could
it's a 4-issue series. Weekly.
To be fair, like when Scott, so I don't know if you've seen, Scott Snyder's been talking a lot about Absolute Batman on Twitter, and somebody was like asking him about, you know, artists and fill-in artists and that kind of thing. And it's Nick, I can't think of his last name right now. It's Nick Dragotta, I think is the name of the artist on the series. Mm-hmm. He was saying that Nick would be the main artist on the series, but they would have between arcs fill-in issues, like a 1 issue, you know, like essentially one shot with a different artist to give him a break. And in that comment, Scott Snyder like kind of unspectacularly said they have 2 years planned currently, which is, you know, quite a large amount of time.
Yeah.
And that could indicate that they are far enough ahead to do every week for the first month. And the other big thing here that I'll drop here, because this seems like a time to say it, is that one of the things that they say behind why they're doing these cards for like, you know, 4 issues in a week is they're trying to get people into the store every week compared to people coming in like once a month or anything like that. So you could be onto something there, Katie. That could be what's going on here.
I do still remain skeptical of it. One, because it's like you get a Justice League membership card, and then, you know, it's a QR. So it is I'm sure that link will spill out onto the internet immediately. Sure. So, like, I get what they're going for, and I personally love a little tchotchke. So depending on how, like, high quality the card is, if it's, like, you know, a business card or something, I will not care about it at all. But if it's, like, a cute little, like, artifact of comic history, you know, I'll be like, oh, maybe I will get you know, the 4 issues. So I'm it's so interesting to have this happen just like 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever after the Marvel QR code thing. And it makes me. I'm going to put on my little tinfoil hat for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
And it makes me think maybe Marvel had caught wind of this QR code thing. Because their QR codes are so lazy and they have
yeah,
no content around them. It's like,
yeah.
were they trying to were they trying to scoop this?
That's actually such an interesting theory. That is such an interesting theory. Like, I don't want to be the one who
I
completely
love a tinfoil
baselessly
hat.
throws out an accusation, but I will say, based on, I think we were reading it when it came out, like the story of one of the like X-Men creators like being pitched this from the editor. It did
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's like it was an editor being like, "Hey, would you be able to do something if we threw a QR code in there? You know, like maybe like." That kind of does sound like an editor who maybe got wind of something and was like, "I just want to stick this in," but I don't know. I'm not gonna throw out any basic accusations.
Not saying
but
anything.
I think it's a very interesting
Just saying
question.
tinfoil hat is on.
Yeah.
Timing is weird. And DC's clearly seems much more well developed than Marvel's.
Yeah. And like as we were throwing out a bunch of ideas, like I'm shocked we didn't come up with what I think is a great idea is like doing the behind the scenes like director's cut type stuff in the QR code. Like, that's such a cool because then you don't have to worry about like, oh well, I'd rather read this or whatever. It's like, oh no, like this is really stuff that's disconnected from
extraneous.
The story. Yeah, it's like okay, you'll get character designs and maybe script page or whatever, and then like you'll also get preview pages for the next issue, which is just like okay, instead of soliciting those a month early, they'll just be in the QR code here, which is like fine. And it really is like, oh, it's not like why didn't they include that in this issue? It's because like, oh, it's from the next issue. I'm just getting it early.
Yeah. No,
so I think this is much more like fully baked than Marvel's idea.
100%.
So I'm here for it.
And I'm kind of excited by it. Again, like we were saying, we like to see innovations and like new ideas in comics, especially. And I'm such a sucker for anything that's like we want people to go to comic book shops. Because, like, I love going to my comic book shop every week. And having things that are, like, incentive for people to kind of step into that culture and stuff that is, like, very, like, invite in. It's calling people in to be like, we want you to come every week. Come and be a part of things. I think that's sweet. Granted, it's probably because they want people to, you know, or definitely because they want people to buy their comics. But, you know. The fact that they twisted it as like we want people to go to comic shops, I dig it.
But there is like a thing to be said, like the way they're building it around weeks instead of just around buying stuff is actually somewhat beneficial to like, let's try to get people in there every single week compared to anything else. The last thing I want to throw out here, because I've just noticed this, is that each of these cards have a power level for each of these characters. Which is
it's Joe's favorite thing. He loves comparing hero power.
It's out of 100. What would you like to guess? Each of their power levels are out of 100 for the Trinity.
Okay, so it's the Trinity. Can you, based on what you know of the power levels, tell me is this compared to like is an average person number 1 or is like a superhero power level 1?
I don't think anyone's power level 1 based on this.
Okay, that's kind of what I was going for. Like, you know, so we know that superheroes must certainly be above 50 at the very least. Like once you are named,
you seem to be on a good track so far.
Yeah. I'm gonna say I don't think they would be so bold as to put anyone at power level 100 right away. Even though Superman could be a contender just for the memes. Of like Superman's our powerful boy, just for the memes, you know, he's Superman.
Just for the memes.
It's just one of those things where like we as enlightened individuals know that there are various weaknesses that Superman has, such as his inability to combat magic. So he could be 100 from a casual viewer perspective. I'm gonna say that Superman is. Should I use stupid numbers or round numbers?
I would round to 5.
Okay, that's kind of what I was asking. I'm going to say Superman is 95, Wonder Woman is 90, and Batman is also 90.
You are off with everybody.
Fuck.
You have the order correct.
I'll take that.
Superman is 100.
Damn.
Wonder Woman is 95. Batman is 75.
Okay, it makes sense. I didn't think they would do it though. Like
I
DC,
actually thought 75 was, until you started like asking your questions. I was like 75 is way too high. I'm sorry. Like we're talking power level. We're not talking like ability to like be useful.
If
like
I were to
is
rank
like
Batman, 75
yeah.
is around where I would do it. But I didn't think that DC would do that. They don't like to admit that Batman is...
I wouldn't rank him at 75. I wouldn't put him that high because like even if you're saying No More Heroes 50, like what's Batman then 60? Like he's not like in terms of power level that much above him. In terms of like intellect or shit, sure.
Well, I mean,
like,
are we talking power level in terms of like
I assume power?
Punch the stupid arcade game and get the highest number? Or are we talking power level in terms of who can defeat each other?
I don't know. If it's who can defeat each other, they're screwing up their own thing because I don't know if Superman's ever won a fight with Batman in DC continuity.
Okay. It's all. I'm excited if they do more of these to hear your reactions to the power levels.
Green Lantern and Flash.
They certainly must, yeah.
Though interestingly, like in the new Justice League book that's launching, I don't think we actually end up talking about it because there's just so much shit coming out. There's not a Green Lantern on the team. Like Star Sapphire's on the team instead.
Oh.
But it's supposedly going to be like they're using the Justice League Unlimited name because they're supposedly going to do like something out of that mold where it's like different teams every issue.
I think that's fun.
Like a big Justice
I
League
dig
thing.
that.
Anyway, we have rambled very long.
Yes.
Because this was a fun thing to talk about.
This is exciting news.
What else is fun to talk about is actual comic books. So let's go to the weekly polls. Okay, here we are in the poll list rec. Like we covered at the top of the episode, we have a ton of polls this week.
Yes.
Including Ultimate Spider-Man number 8, Daredevil Woman Without Fear 1 and 2, Wolverine Revenge number 1, Dark Knights of Steel, Allwinter 1 and 2, Morningstar number 5, and Local Man 13. And Katie, I'm about to ask you what else you picked up for the week, but I'm going to start by asking you a question that I very specifically not asked you off of pod because I think it's funnier this way. Which Wolverine Revenge did you read?
What do you... Here's the thing, I don't know what you mean by that, so I cannot answer the question.
It's a red label option book. It's a red label option book.
Oh, yeah. So, peek behind the curtain. My family's getting ready to go on vacation, so I've been working a whole lot leading up to this, so I didn't get my physicals this week. So, I'm going to guess, based off of the digital that I read, that it was not the red label option. Because there's that moment where the T-Rex bites Wolverine in half.
Yeah.
And there's not... It just had punctures in him for the remaining bit. And I'm assuming with what I've seen of the red label that there are a lot more guts going on.
Yeah, it's pretty... I'm interested how it was was the final image for you not like that final splash? Was that brutal in the non-red label?
I mean, it was gross. But I wouldn't say brutal.
It's I don't know. I guess they probably could have gotten away with that in the non. Anyway, I was just interested to hear that. I went with the red label version because,
Maybe I'll pick up the red label as my physical. See how it compares.
Yeah, but in any case, I'm going to now throw the main question to you. What else did you get?
Yeah, so this week is Batman and Superman, World's Finest. Gotham City Sirens. I've been pulling that up on the weekly. Nightwing. I'm not sure if it actually came out this week because I feel like it's been moving around a lot, but I'm going to be grabbing Something Crawled Out from Vault Comics. And I've got a standing pull for Titans, even though I am not keeping up with it. How about you, Jim?
I need to get it started. I need to get my Titans pull started again.
Yeah, in preparation for the Layman reign.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a light week for me, honestly. We have Green Lantern War Journal number 12, the ending of that series, very sad. And a Magma Comics book, the Scale Trade issue 4, which is the ending of that series, I believe. So my pull list is going to get even lighter for the fourth week of the month, fourth week, whatever week of the month it is.
Yeah, fourth week.
Fourth week of the month. So yeah, it's going to get even lighter. But we have a ton of books that we've been both pulling.
Actually, the third week of the month.
Oh, okay. So third week.
Yeah.
In any case, we have so many books.
So many.
So if you don't have this immediately, I'm going to say we cut and figure it out off camera.
Yeah, no, super duper easy. Clearly, we're going to start off with Spider-Man, because why not? We're going to start off with Spider-Man. Then we're going to jump to Wolverine, because we're
Yep,
sticking
makes
with our
sense.
Marvel. And then we'll go with
Yep.
our double with Daredevil.
That track.
And then we'll go to our next double with Dark Knights of Steel.
I already knew that's what was coming.
Exactly,
Yep.
yeah. And then we will hit Local Man, and then we'll end off with Morningstar.
Boom. Nailed it. But that means we will see you all for some USM, Ultimate Spider-Man, number 8.
Ultimate Spider-Man number 8. Kingpin's Sinister Six. Kingpin gathers a team to deal with his masked vigilante problem, but a group of supervillains isn't the only challenge Spider-Man will face. Meanwhile, Green Goblin joins forces with Doc Ock. The writer here is Jonathan Hickman of the Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men. The artist is Marco Cicchetto of Daredevil and Star Wars. The colorist is Matt Wilson, and the letterer is Corey Petit. Jay,
Yes.
this we had to address first. We had a massive cliffhanger on the last episode as Tony Stark returns to the Ultimate Universe.
He's back, baby.
Yeah, we didn't bring it up, for the spoiler-free pull list discussion before, but what an amazing end to that issue. Phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And we're dealing with that now. How did you feel about issue 8 of Ultimate
I'm going to
Spider-Man?
say 2 things before I actually talk about this issue in any actual depth. The first thing I'm going to say is I really love this Iron Man design. Like, I think it's a really dang cool Iron Man design.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm so here for it. And the second thing I'm going to say is this comic book does, and not to any like actual detriment, because it really doesn't end up mattering, but it does one of my pet peeves in comic books, which is not starting at the cliffhanger, like starting somewhere else and then flashing back to the cliffhanger, and that always bothers me just that little bit.
I'm not gonna lie, I really like it.
We get there pretty fast here, so it's not like one of those issues. It's like we're gonna do the whole issue and then get back to it. Like, it really doesn't bother me that much, but I had to point it out because it's a little pet peeve there.
It's what the opposite of a pet peeve for me. I love when they do that.
Yeah, so what I will say here is this was not what I was expecting out of this issue, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
We did last issue, and we were talking about last issue. We said last issue felt like a setup issue. It was like, here's the setup issue, and here's this big cliffhanger. We're really going to get into it next issue. This is a setup issue.
Yeah.
Which is not what I was expecting. I was expecting like a bigger kind of like ramp up issue. But we got another big setup issue. That being said, we got a really, really strong setup issue that puts so many cool things in motion. By the way, the Goblin Tony dynamic for the like 3 pages we get it is phenomenal.
So good.
It's so good. I also love this Tony. Like, I think Tony's character just weirdly fits better when he's younger. Like, when you have like a like 40-year-old man. Because then you can
get away with the kind of like asshole personality.
Yeah, like when you have a 40-year-old man with that, it's like, it'd be like, because I think young Tony / young Hal Jordan have a very similar character. And then like Hal matures into like the veteran type character that he like kind of grew into, but Tony still has the same character that he had from like his younger years. But I think it works so well with the young Tony, where it's just like he comes off as like full of himself and kind of snobby and kind of willing to brush people off and very sure that he's always correct. And it just feels really good when you have this like young Tony who also like has so much that he needs to do because he's like in this really tough situation of like trying to fix the universe essentially, which is
And I think it also works really well when he's not your like kind of main title character. Like he gets to come in and be an asshole side character.
We'll talk about another character in another Marvel book this week that works much better when he's not the central character, and we'll get there. At least in my opinion. We'll see.
I already know what you're going
I have 2 characters actually from each of the other books that I feel that way about.
I think I know your first one, and I'm gonna assume.
We'll get there.
We'll get to it.
Because I definitely want to talk about that stuff, because I think that this week is just a great example of how certain characters are not meant to be the protagonists of books, but are still really, really good characters.
Yes,
this is a good example.
And can very much enhance books where they're not the.
But like I think it works really well as a side character here. And the last thing I want to say is just like so many of the characters get such good development in this issue. It's obviously a great issue of Green Goblin, despite his limited comic page time, whatever the comic book equivalent of screen time is. But it's also a fantastic J. Jonah Jameson issue.
I was about to say, Jonah has like, such a good movie.
the big thing here, and honestly, also the most that I what shoot, it's not because his daughter's May, but his son's not Ben. I'm
His
trying to
da-
think of his son's name now.
no, it's oh no, oh no, fake fans.
Yeah,
His
it
son.
it's the kind of the first time his son gets to do anything in the book.
Yeah,
Like his daughter's had stuff in the past, May's had stuff. It's the first time his son really gets anything, which is
and
nice.
it's like you're saying, it's exciting setup for because it seems
Yeah,
clear that it's like an impactful moment when Jonah interacts with Peter's son, and it's like, oh, is Peter's son gonna like be a part of this? Because
I hope
May
so.
was kind of there as a bit of a cute accessory almost,
Yeah.
but it
Mhm.
seems like his son is going to be able to, he'll have enough that we'll remember his name going forward. So I'm super
I,
excited about that. Like you said, great development for everyone.
oh
And
yeah.
I think what I'm really, really loving about Jonathan Hickman's writing on this series is even the issues where I'm like, I thought that this was going to be more action packed spider web heading. Those issues are still so good. Like if we look back at
Yeah.
the previous arc with the dinner issue, where it's like this is technically so I really enjoy reading this issue, but where it is maybe confuses me. It's one of those things where even though I thought we were getting into the action, like you're saying, it's still just such a good individual issue, and so much of that is because of Jonathan Hickman's talent as a writer for these. They're not really slower issues, but these kind of like non superhero-y issues.
This issue is interesting because it's really not slow in the way that something like the dinner party episode or even last issue was. Because
Mhm.
last issue was like a slow burn type setup, like
Yeah.
we're really in one moment for it. A lot happens in this issue because we're
Yes.
setting up so many different things. So it's not slow paced. It's just setup. We get the setup
Exactly.
from the villain's end, which I don't really want to talk about at all because it's very on the back end, and I don't really want to
Yes.
spoil any of those characters. But I'll
And
just
they're
say that I
awesome
think it's really,
introductions.
yeah, it's a really cool ultimate twist on a bunch of established Spider-Man characters,
Yes.
and I'm very excited to see them introduced into the greater story.
Same.
But yeah, I'm gonna go out and say, ooh, I'm torn between this and the Green Goblin like origin issue, but this might be my favorite issue of Ultimate Spider-Man so far.
It's
I
really, really
like this
good.
issue.
It's so good. Yeah, it's just a really, really good time, even when it doesn't have that kind of forward momentum that we
Yep.
thought it was gonna have. Amazing work. And I'd be remiss every time Marco Cicchetto's art is on the page not to say what an amazing artist he is. Like the expressiveness of his characters, the way that he like moves them on the page, the way that he draws Spider-Man, which is like so important, being able to draw the spider suit in a way that works. The one last thing I want to touch on, because we've been talking about Spider-Man a bit longer than I think we meant to, but
Yeah.
is I think we're already getting the sinister side of Peter's voice in the suit. Like we were talking about what we think might be going on with that because we don't think that it'll be Peter's consciousness there forever. I think that we're already seeing there's that really ominous thing where he's talking to his suit, and he's like, "Oh wait, you can talk when I'm not like in you and Manny." And it's like, "Yes, I can." And he's like, "All right, well, I'm leaving you behind because I'm just going to a birthday party." And the fact that the suit's last little line as Peter's walking out the door is that like, "Don't forget to say happy birthday to the kids for me," is so
I'm gonna
ominous.
throw out a really weird theory because I'm glad you hit that because this is something I wanted to talk about. I have an interesting theory because it makes a lot of sense if you think about it for a
I'm
second.
curious if it's going to be the same kind of theory that I have brewing. Go ahead.
Because let's think, this Pico suit was originally his black suit. Like we got started with a black suit, Spider-Man. We have this
do
now
have
with
the same theory.
I think this is going to turn into Ultimate Venom.
I
Like that's
think
where
so
people
too.
go.
Absolutely.
That's an Ultimate Venom who like thinks he's Peter and actually like wants to be with his kid. Terrifying. And I want that to happen so bad because that's so cool.
I was
and
so
it takes back
excited
everything
when
I said about
this.
the Peter voice being like a stupid decision in the last issue. If that's where they're going, because that's so cool.
That's so fucking rad. And even the way that he would like, I literally goosebumps because I'm so excited for the concept of that. But when he reached out and like touched the suit, the way that it kind of like climbed up his arm was very Venom-esque. And I'm like, oh baby, we're getting Ultimate Venom, and it's gonna be so spooky because it's gonna love Peter's family.
Oh yeah, and I'm hoping that leads to us just getting a full blown evil Venom, which is very nice. It's like a world in which Venom is like fully anti-hero, like getting a full on evil, obsessed with Peter, classical Venom. Give it to me. Give it to me.
So great. So yeah, lots of great things happening in Spider-Man there. But I think next up on our list, we're gonna jump into a new series, Wolverine Revenge. We've been excited
Yep.
about this for a long while since Greg Capullo spilled the beans. Let's head over there now.
Wolverine Revenge #1. Greg Capullo makes his grand return to Marvel Comics storytelling as he and Jonathan Hickman pit Wolverine against a cadre of foes who will turn his world upside down. He's been beaten, he's been bloodied, and Logan only has one thought on his mind: revenge. Don't miss this prestige miniseries, set to become one of the defining tales in Wolverine's storied legend. Our writer is, of course, Jonathan Hickman, once again, Avengers, Fantastic Four, and X-Men. The artist is the great Greg Capullo of Batman, Spawn, and Dark Knight's Metal. The colorist is FCO Placencia, and the letter is Koi Petit. Katie, brand new Wolverine miniseries. Greg Capullo's grand return since before we started this podcast to Interiors. Take it away.
All right. Now, I don't think it's been made any secret on this podcast that I love the Court of Owls storyline in Batman. I love pretty much all of Scott Snyder's run, but so much of what I think makes his Batman so definitive is the look of him. The way that Greg Capullo draws Batman is so perfect. Like, it is the exact kind of shadowy, spooky, but still kind of like mortal man. But like, he doesn't look like a superhero, he looks like Batman. And I love that so much about him. And I think that Wolverine is that kind of blueprint as well. One thing that I was noting as I was reading this was I really liked the way that he was drawing like Captain America's face. I think that he looked very Captain America-y, but it's one of those things just like, oh, when you have a mask with the visor eyes, that is Greg Capullo's bread and fucking butter, man. The way that he does expression through that, the way that he expresses so much through characters' mouths as well, from all that practice with Batman, it works so perfectly. And I think that he is just such an amazing talent for just really good superhero art. It's so phenomenal. There's these scenes where characters are getting ambushed by other characters, and every action shot in there feels so impactful, feels so exciting, feels so unique. And I think that's part of what makes it amazing as well. You're not seeing like Wolverine fight people with his claws in the same way every time he fights them. We see him fight a T-Rex, and that's different from the way that he's like preparing to fight other foes. And it's just so good to have such a... It never feels boring on the page with Greg Capullo. And like we were just gassing Jonathan Hickman up, he is such a great writer. I think that this is a book that I'm not like the biggest Wolverine fan. I don't dislike him or anything, but I'm kind of neutral on him. And I think that the setup for this world, because I didn't know going into it that it was like an alternate universe thing.
I didn't either, honestly.
Yeah. So there are really big moments that make you feel like, oh, shit. Because, not knowing what's going on in the Marvel Universe, I'm like, oh, did 3 billion people in North America recently die because of a comet that Magneto brought down?
Oh, that was what I kind of got, that it was alternate universe. As soon as they were like, after Magneto and like that, I was like, this feels like the setup to an AU type story.
I was like, maybe, but also so much is going on with the X-Men right now that I don't know.
True.
That's what really stumped me, because I'm like, I know weird stuff is happening with X-Men from what we read in Uncanny X-Men, but I don't know what. So yeah, Greg Capullo just makes everything that he touches turn to badass shadow, and Jonathan Hickman's writing is really, I think that he's doing great setup here, and I'm so excited for the story that's going to be told, because no spoilers, since it's like literally is the last couple pages, but it's got such a rad premise coming into it that I'm really hype on. You're a Wolverine guy, though.
I'm a Wolverine guy.
Yeah, you're a Wolverine guy.
This is why I'm a Wolverine guy. Like, goddamn, this is just cool. It's just cool. It's exciting. It's such a cool, like, alternate universe idea. The second they say, like, after Magneto, like, it's like an AD, BC type thing.
Yes,
like, oh, that's cool. Like, that's exciting. Like, that makes it feel important. And then, like, Nick Fury shows up, and Cap shows up, and Bucky shows up, and I'm like, wait, is this a team book? What's going on? And also, why does Greg Capullo make them all look so important? Like,
Right?
suddenly I'm like, did we just, like, land on weirdly with a DC artist now moving to Marvel? Did we land on the Dan Moore of Marvel here, where every time he draws somebody and be like, oh, is that the new, like,
it's like, oh, is that the
most
definitive
iconic
way
version?
that they look?
Yeah. It's just like, I'm like,
Are
oh, no,
all
that
of their League of
so
Comic
good.
Geeks
Nick
portraits
Fury looks
changing?
so good.
He looks
And then,
so
like,
good.
we get to the villains, and it's like, that might be the best Deadpool's ever looked. That might be the
Which,
best
speaking of,
Sabretooth's
I'm
ever looked.
assuming that Deadpool is the one you
That
were
was the first
hinting
one
at
I
last
thought of.
time.
That
Yeah.
was the first one I thought of.
Yeah.
He works so well here as, like, a villain and, like, a true antagonist to Wolverine, even though he's, like, secondary to Sabretooth. And then, should I spoil the, like, main villain of the issue, or is that a reveal that
I'd
we
say
save
that's a pretty good reveal to save.
Yeah, okay, so we'll save that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
And so, like, exciting. But you get Wolverine, like, pitted against all of these people who have such good dynamic to pit against him. And Hickman does such a great job writing them. And, man, it's just... This is, like, entirely a setup issue, but it's also an action-packed issue, which is just so cool.
Yes.
And damn, they leave you with such a finale and a final image and all of that. I thought this was a fantastic issue.
It was so fun. It was so good. Like you said, this is Wolverine just being fucking cool. And that's, I think, what generally you would want out of a Wolverine book.
Fully agree.
But, again, like you said, it's a hard one to not give spoilers for, so I think we should move right along before we say something that we shouldn't. So I think that it's time to jump over to the first of our double-sized pull list reviews for the week with Daredevil, The Woman Without Fear, numbers 1 and 2.
Let's do it!
Right, Daredevil, Woman Without Fear. We're going to focus on number 2 with number 1 informing that review.
Yep.
So Daredevil, Woman Without Fear, number 2. Daredevil versus the Punisher. Spiraling out of the chaos of the main Daredevil series, Elektra has learned a horrifying truth. Though whispered about in shadows and dive bars, her worst suspicions have been confirmed. A dangerous and violent new Punisher has been born into the Marvel Universe, and Daredevil is dead in his sights. The writer here is Erica Schultz of Daredevil Gang War, Rat City, and X-23. The artist is Michael Dowling of Judge Dredd, Thor, and Amazing Spider-Man. The colorist is Deacon Ife, and the letterer is Clayton Cowles. Jay, you're a Daredevil guy.
I am a Daredevil guy.
And you're, in fact, an Elektra Daredevil guy, I believe.
I am an Elektra Daredevil guy. I love Elektra. Quite possibly my favorite Marvel character.
Do you want to give, like, just a real quick couple-sentence summary of the first issue to kind of orient us for this second one?
Yeah, okay, so Elektra's ward, whose name is escaping me
Alice.
For the second, Alice, is kind of abducted, and so Elektra has to kind of, figure out what's going on. So she's supposed to meet up with a contact who's going to give her some information. Instead, she comes across Crossbones, who maybe is or maybe isn't the contact, so she's trying to get information out of him as she fights him. But lo and behold, somebody starts sniping at them in a moving train, and it is the new Punisher. I don't have any context for that. I have heard there's a new Punisher, but I have no idea how that happened.
And we know that it's not Frank Castle. Yeah. Like, yes, that is kind of implied by new Punisher, but I
have
feel
some
like
context for what happened to Frank Castle. I know Frank Castle went from, like, Punisher to leader of the Hand Punisher. But then I don't know what happened from that to us getting a new Punisher, but I have at least that little bit of context. But I assume that has something to do with why he's not, like, Punisher now. But there's this new Punisher, and he ends up shooting Crossbones, and that's kind of where we pick up on
in the arm.
With this issue. Yeah, in the arm. Yeah. Though Crossbones is kind of a baby about it, and just, like, plops. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about this issue. I like Elektra so much, and I like Elektra as Daredevil a lot, and it's definitely one of those things where, like, when you have a long-term writer like Chip Zdarsky, who, I'm going to get the years on this wrong, but spent a great deal of years writing Daredevil and Elektra and being pretty much the only person who was writing Daredevil and Elektra. Then when he's gone and you have new writers picking up these characters, there's a great deal of concern that they will not be handled correctly. And I think that we are 1 for 2. And I'll at least take the. I think Elektra being handed off to Erica Schultz so far has been a fantastic
Yes.
transition.
With Gang
Daredevil
War and
Gang
now
War.
with the full
Yeah,
book.
exactly. I am really, really liking the way that Erica Schultz writes Elektra. She really like leans into the like walking contradiction that Elektra as Daredevil is, because she was like an assassin. She literally talks about how like she didn't just used to kill people, like she enjoyed it, and it was like what she did. It was her like activity. It was her pastime.
It was her hobby.
Yeah, yeah. And now she's here being like, now I'm Daredevil, whose like whole thing is I won't kill people. I can't let other people kill people. I have to protect. I have to be like literally
even
a
the
walking
bad guys,
contradiction.
you have to
Yeah.
save them from being killed.
And she like leans into, and I mean this both for Erica and Elektra, like they lean into this contradiction, and we so often get Elektra like saying one thing and doing another thing, and then going back on what she said. I'm not gonna spoil where we end up at this issue, but the like leave off stinger of this issue is just so funny but so cool based on like how we get there and everything. So I really, really like the way that Elektra is written here. And the other character that I thought of after I thought of Deadpool is, I think Punisher works much better as like not a villain the way that Deadpool's a kind of more like as an opposing force for your originally introduced Spider-Man, or you can go to the like Marvel shows where it's like Punisher and Daredevil both going after the same people, but Daredevil has to keep stopping him from killing people. Like I think that's an interesting thing where you have this hero's like, I need to stop this guy, but I also know he's going after people who are bad. So what is that dynamic? And Elektra doing that here with this new Punisher is so cool, because she's so like
cool.
She knows that she is like a hypocrite here. She's like, I was you, and I have no foot to stand on, but I also can't let you do this anyway.
Yes.
So it's such a cool dynamic. We really stay in the moment for most of this issue. You know, I think we flash back to her ward like once or twice in the issue.
Flash over to her
her ward where she is now. Alice, thank you.
Which is a cool mystery on its own of like who has Alice.
So we flash over a couple times, but it's mainly on Elektra and Punisher kind of fighting and feel it out, and it's just really well done. It's actually a lot like the issues of Gang War that we really enjoyed, where we're just like, it's this great action with really solid character writing for Elektra throughout. So,
and that's what I was worried about going into this, because like saying with Spider-Man again, freaking Chichetto, man, he's such a talent, and he was the artist on Gang War, so like had real high expectations for like Elektra as Daredevil action, and I think that this new artist, Michael Dowling, really does nail it. There's a really awesome sequence in specifically this issue where Elektra's fighting Punisher, and we see like, you know, that classic kind of martial artist thing where it's like they're hitting you so fast that you can't even like react, and each hit feels like it has the exact amount of power and precision that person is trying to put behind it. There's a really neat sequence where we get that of just like incredibly rapid hits that then, you know, end with an awesome moment. And I feel like that's just a testament to how this artist is approaching Daredevil, where she is like this elite martial artist, and she's allowed to use so much of that training in what she's doing. She's not just throwing punches and stabbing with the sai. She's constantly using things in innovative ways, and moving in ways that react to her opponent. Like, it doesn't feel like she's just trading blows with someone. And I think that's really important for a character like this, who's supposed to be this incredibly proficient martial artist.
Fully
and
agree.
On top of that, the art just looks rad.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's also like very, like, the action sequence is very like structured in the sense that it's not just like, oh, they fight and they fight some more and they fight some more. It's very much like they fight and then Elektra gets this to happen so that she can get away, and then he goes after her, and then she fights, but it doesn't, like, she can't actually stop him because he has this, and then she has to figure it out like this. I'm not going to kind of spoil the way that all that goes, but it's all very like logically sequential in not just they fight for 12 pages. In like this happens and that leads to this happening and that leads to this happening. Like, it's just a very nicely structured, both on the writing and art side, fight sequence. Like, it's very logical compared to just doing stuff.
I'm so glad that we are picking this up. Erica Schultz doing Such a phenomenal job. And
Absolutely.
it was fun to read two issues. Unnecessary. I think issue one would have hooked me anyway. But this isn't our only two issue poll for the week.
It's not.
It's time to catch up on Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter. Ready?
Let's do it. Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter. Once again, we read issue 1, but we're going to mainly, I think, focus on issue 2
Yes.
here, with issue 1 informing it. Can Deathstroke stop the endless winter? Deathstroke's past and present collide when he discovers the source of Vander Savage's ear is being protected by Adeline, Deathstroke's wife. But what she has in her possession might be the only thing capable of stopping this endless winter for good. Crossing Vandar is dangerous enough, but their quest will barely have begun before tragedy strikes their quest, rather. Superstar writer Tom Taylor returns to the world of Dark Knights of Steel with artist Riccardo Federici to tell the story of an orphan child heir to the throne of Atlantis, whose arrival will signal prosperity or terror. We have two writers for the two different stories here. The first one is Jay Kristoff of Wonder Woman, Nightwing, and Superman, and then the second is Tom Taylor of Nightwing, Injustice, and Titans. The first artist, we have Riccardo Federici of Aquaman, Action Comics, and Detective Comics, and we have Turso Khans of Wonder Woman, Nightwing, and Superman. The colorist is Arif Prianto, and the letterer is Wes Abbott.
I quite enjoyed this. I very much. I'm such a swords and sorcery bitch, though. Like I was eating Dark Knights of Steel up. I read the entirety of the first 6 issues when they were coming out, and I actually still haven't gotten around to issues 7 through 12. Not for lack of interest, just for lack of the issues sitting directly in front of me in my line of sight. To say, all right, I should read that. Yeah, I think that this is the type of like AU action, like alternate universe action, that I'm like, this is just so fun. Because it's one of those things where it gets to be its own universe, and it really does get to kind of write its own rules for the universe as well. The characters are kind of fast and loose because they're allowed to be fast and loose because it's a complete alternate history where the fucking Kryptonians came down and became Arthurian kings. Like, how freaking cool is that? It's so cool. It's so rad. And this focuses on Deathstroke in this like Viking style era where there's this endless winter going, and they do a really rad thing with the color that the endless winter is depicted in the book being grayscale. Like they put it on the page that they're suffering from this endless winter, and this kid is a beacon of light and hope to end the winter, and he's able to be colored. Like, he is colored, and the things he touches get to have some color as well. And I think that if it was for like an ongoing or some sort of long form thing, that would get tired really easily. But I think the fact that it's going to be over this limited series is going to be a really effective device, especially because we see in this issue him starting to like spread that color more in a way that is definitely going to like it's just neat to see that narrative playing out in the actual art of the book as well. And Deathstroke as a freaking Viking, get out of here. That's so fucking cool. Like, he's in here with his hand axes. They do, I think, a really, really good job with the combat in these 2 issues. Specifically, the second issue, it's a big fight with, I don't think it's out of bounds to say who the fight is with. It's pretty early on. Yeah.
No, I think you're good.
Yeah. It's one of those things where trying to remember where one issue ends and the next one starts. It's Deathstroke fighting Ravager, and dude, her helmet with the like the way that it mirrors her regular hood in the comics, the way they did it with the helmet is so cool. And she's got like these sweet stag oh my god, so rad. And the way that the fight ends.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Talk about like a powerful image. Yeah. So cool. And the way that Deathstroke is characterized through this is already so absolutely buck wild awesome to me. I think that the setup that we're getting is a story that you love to see, like that kind of Last of Us type story where it's like grumpy old man with beacon of hope child. I'm so hyped for this series. I'm so glad that we're picking it up. How did you feel about it? With no context for Dark Knights of Steel.
Yeah, no context, which I think hurt to some extent. But I'm glad we did 2 issues. The first issue I did not enjoy the first issue as much as the second issue. I think you hit on I think the strongest thing here is like the designs are so freaking cool, and like the art's fantastic. But the designs of like seeing these characters in this sort of like Viking-ized setting is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Also, they used Endless Winter in the description, which is like just harkening back to Endless Winter. And I'm like,
God.
that's not DC should never use the words Endless Winter.
We don't think about the Endless Winter here
again. But yeah, I love Rose, so I do like to see Rose popping up to kind of go face to face with Deathstroke, single eye to single eye with Deathstroke. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a very interesting book, and this issue in particular, I think this issue does some really cool things. I think this is where we differ. I think this is like, for me, not how I typically like alternate universe books to be, where it's just it's too different for me, where I'm wondering why we're using DC characters to tell this story, because they really aren't the characters in a lot of ways. And I'm like, I typically prefer something that's like, we'll start with the characters where they were, or we'll try to retell the story but somewhat different, and then we'll go off like a different way, something like the Ultimate Universe,
or like a kind of alternate history, as opposed to
to
alternate
just completely
history.
Different. Because then I'm just left something like, I don't know what really makes it DC outside of them like looking like DC characters in certain ways,
yeah.
But I think it's phenomenally well done. I think that it's gorgeous, and it's paced. The second issue's paced very well. I thought the first issue was paced a little bit slowly.
A little bit.
The second issue's paced very well, and it's just a lot of great action. The secondary story is one that's much better in the second issue than the first issue, in my opinion.
Yes.
I thought the first issue was real rough outside of the ending image, which I can actually talk about because it's from the first issue of Emperor Manta, which is just another sick design. Like, this is the kind of thing that like I'm like, oh yeah, like for a series of variant covers, this would be so freaking cool. But like as a book, I'm glad it's not really for me. But yeah, I think that it's a cool like kind of Aquaman Superman set, or Superman Aquaman set, Aquaman setup with a Superman origin, essentially. Like, I think that's cool. But yeah, I don't know if the series is super for me, and nothing because of anything that they like did wrong. I'm just not super interested in like the DC characters when they're not really the DC characters, if that makes sense.
That's so fair. It's one of those things, I think we've talked about this in terms of art style before, where when something takes a big swing, that means that it's by being so far from the median, that means that you're not catching some people's, kind of range of interest.
Absolutely.
But you're very much catching somebody else's.
Yeah.
So it's such a matter of taste with something like this.
100%.
But that is our only DC book for the week. DC terribly outnumbered by Marvel. But that means we're moving on to the indies.
Yeah.
So it is Image time with Local Man number 13.
Let's local that man.
Local Man number 13. Local Man has lost Farmington to the forces of the Faceless Horde. Now every townsperson is a devout, fanatical member of a sprawling terrorist organization bent on rebooting the world, including his own grieving mom. Now Jack is alone and outclassed. Thankfully, he has the one thing that makes every Image superhero smile. Lots and lots of big-ass guns. The writers and artists here are Tim Seeley and Tony Fleeces. Tim Seeley, of course, of Hackslash, Nightwing, and Batman Eternal. Tony Fleeces of Stray Dogs, Gargoyles, and Feral. The colorists are Felipe Sobrero and Brad Simpson, and the letterers are, again, Tim Seeley and Tony Fleeces. Jay,
yes.
Local Man has been such a hit for us since we started picking it up as singles. And this is a very important issue.
It's an arc ender.
It's an arc ender.
Very strangely in an issue 13. This is what happens.
That's why I was about to say it's an arc ender, and then I was like, 13. There's no... It is an arc ender, though. Like,
it's an arc ender. Is... Like, I was the one who pasted that description thing. I had to cut out end of arc at the top, because Image loves to just put in, like, full bold, like, end of arc when
which, honestly, ending. I appreciate.
Yeah, so... Yeah, this is the end of the arc in an issue 13, which is interesting.
Weird.
But yeah, okay, let's get into this, because
jump into it, man.
Happens in here.
Yes.
So where do I want to start? I'm going to start with we get once again a not starting where the cliffhanger is, and then like previously to where our cliffhanger was, which was our local man who's Jack. There we go, Jack. Realizing that Inga is the one who killed his father, and like literally trying to strangle her to death, which is just such an impactful
Yes.
panel. And I just love the way that whole scene is written. It's so good. His anger is so well placed, and you get a really good like true hero moment. It feels like where like he doesn't exactly act heroic, but he does like he gives up on his personal retribution to go do the right
Yes.
thing that he has to do. So it's this like unspectacular hero moment, but a really good hero moment.
And an important
And
character moment for Crossjack.
oh, absolutely. And this issue is just also full of a lot of like good one-liners. I want to throw
Yes.
that out there. Like we have I think it's they all come from the goddamn Uber driver too. There's
Who's the best character?
yeah. There's this is Wisconsin. We have got
We have
guns
guns.
here, which I love. And then there's after he knocks out somebody who said "fuck Crossjack," his line of "you motherfucker stole my line."
God.
Like, yes!
We
Yes.
love the Uber driver, who probably has a name. I just call him
I
Black
don't know if
Beauty
he
in my
does.
head.
He might actually be one where we're not
He
forgetting the
might.
name they have not named
Which
him.
would be actively hilarious.
Yeah, there's a
but
lot.
yeah.
This issue is very funny. Like this issue
Talk
does a lot
about
of
character growth. We already know that he's like pals with Crossjack now, despite
Oh,
the
yeah.
like fuck Crossjack. But someone's about to shoot him, and the man comes out with a goddamn horseshoe and knocks him across the tube. It's so funny. I love that man. Give that
This
man.
issue leans even further into the humor, I think, than a lot of
Yes.
the other issues. Like we have a like post up image of Crossjack with all these guns that's drawn in such a OG
it's so
90s
funny.
style.
I saw
And
it and
it's
almost
hilarious.
puked, and I'm like,
And
oh, that's the 90s.
Crossjack goes from like Jack, local man, because when he is Crossjack, he kind of does look big.
Yeah.
Local man, he's kind of like scrawny up, and now he's like just massive 90s hero. So yeah, this issue's hilarious. That being said, I think it does a good job of wrapping up. I don't know that it's the strongest arc ender the series has had. I think it does a lot of cool things. There's a lot of image. This issue has a lot of 90s image, like not necessarily crossovers, but like homages and stuff.
Kind of,
like,
yeah.
I'm not gonna spoil. There's this cool Spawn thing that happens. It's very sensitive to what happens, which, as somebody who enjoys Spawn quite a bit, I think that's super cool, and that was super rad. And yeah, I like a lot of the like character beats in here and a lot of what happens, but I don't know. It's not that it feels. Maybe it is that it feels a little bit rushed for everything that they did, but it's not my favorite of the arc enders. I think it's a solid arc ender. Is where
I agree. Yeah, I was left a little bit kind of I don't know, just a little bit lost. Not lost really, but at the end I was like, oh, that's the end, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a bummer because we both loved the concept of the faceless horde as the enemy so much.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where it's difficult to defeat the faceless horde because, so much of the power of it is like the multitude of people. But I feel like the way that they went about it wasn't my favorite solution. I like where it was. I like the lead into how they got rid of the faceless horde or neutralized them, but the actual execution of it and the actual idea of it I wasn't as jazzed on. Holding back because it's I think a pretty big spoiler.
Yeah.
It's tough with the issue enders, or the arc enders.
Yeah.
And then I thought that the actual issue ender itself was also a little odd.
I think weirdly we're supposed to care more about the flip side ender.
Mm-hmm. The flip side ender is certainly exciting.
Yeah, which I'll just say features an actual crossover with the 90s image character that they're bringing back. So I think that was what they kind of wanted to leave us with, would be my guess. But I agree with you. The main issue ender is a little bit odd. And then the other thing I'll say about the Faceless Horde is we don't really get to ever see them it's mentioned and we see it in a quick montage, we don't really ever get to see them actually fighting the Faceless Horde.
Yeah.
Like the Horde, which I think is a missed opportunity, because while they talk about it, actually showing like how do you deal with essentially innocent people that you have to fight.
Yeah.
Like how do you deal with that? I think that was a little glossed over when that's like one of the coolest parts of this.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a lot this issue does right. So like,
Yes. Yeah.
it's just, I think you hit it on the head with just kind of like, it's really like the ending note, and like that like
Yes.
last little bit that just leaves you with a little bit of a weird like, that's where we go after all the okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's because I think of the quality of the rest of this arc that the ending feels like it piddled out a little. Because I've really enjoyed the arc up to this
Oh
point,
yeah.
and it's still good comic book.
Oh yeah.
Again, the homages to Image are both fun and funny, and specifically I wanted to touch on the moment where they draw Local Man like a full 90s character.
Oh, yeah.
That is yet again an instance where you know that the people making the book, you know that Tony Fleeces and Tim Seeley were like, this will be so fun to do, and they got to do it, and that is absolutely awesome. So like, it is still a book that just is made with so much excitement and so much passion, which is just always going to be fun to read.
Fully agreed. And I'm still extremely excited to see what comes next. I'm guessing another one shot.
Yeah, it's Local Man number 25, remember?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really
Yes.
excited to talk about that.
Yes.
That's gonna be a lot of fun.
We will keep
I don't know
rolling
how I
with
forgot
Local
about
Man.
that.
Yeah, number 13 to
But we
number
have one-
25.
One book left.
Yes. Another end. We have
Yeah.
Morningstar.
A true end.
A true end. Morningstar number 5. Let's go.
Morningstar number 5. All has gone up in flames. The Garrett family's burial of their father Nathan, Jolene's plans for closure, and a fresh start for her children, Charlie and Meredith. And now even the Morningstar lookout tower burns. Haunted and stalked through the Kootenai forest by memories of her past and delirious visions of her missing family, Jolene's torment has exploded beyond the bounds of reason, and so too has her quest to find her missing children. But something far beyond her wildest imagination reaches out to Jolene to pull her back from the edge of madness. Something that transcends space and time. No telephones, no electricity, no transportation, no escape. We have the writer team of Tim Daniel and David Andrew, who've worked on End After End and Denizen. The artist is the very talented Marco Finnegan of 007 and Night People. The colorist is Jason Wordy, and the letterer is Justin Birch. Katie, this is the end.
This is the end.
How do you feel about the end?
I want to start by saying we talked to David Andrew, and he told us about the actual process of the art and coloring of Morningstar coming together. And just because it's the end and the last chance to gush about it, it is so fucking cool. The entire book is meant to not only look but feel like an artifact from a previous time. They're trying to harken back to like this entire experience of a book, and it really is just so effective. One of the coolest things, talking about Jason Wordy, he on many of these panels and coloring opportunities would in fact misalign his coloring with the line art to emulate a printing press that was like slightly off center, and the small details like that, and even like the background color of the pages, all of those small details just came together so effectively. Such an awesome book to just have produced. Absolutely so cool. Because it was my last chance to gush about it, I wanted to. I feel like we hadn't brought it up for the past couple issues of it, because we had talked it to death on the first couple. But so good. The vibes of this book remain so immaculately like spooky and unsettling and kind of out of step with reality in a way that I think really worked for it throughout its entire run. And in this one, we actually get things like answers and closure that I wasn't expecting us to get, which was, again, I feel like there was a few times where this book really did things that I thought it was going one way, and it really does left turn on you. And the answers and conclusion we get are such a left turn for me that are just exciting to read because it's not what you're expecting to happen. The art in this book, the way that Jolene Joe interacts with her children, especially in this issue where she's trying to figure out what are kind of like the hallucinations of her children that are trying to lead her, and what are her actual kids. Such good interactions, so great. The art of Marco Finnegan, so cool. We've talked about a number of times how so many of these spreads feel like just pieces of art to put on your wall and not just in your comic books. And he delivers again in this issue with so many wonderful things, so many great expressions on his characters. They're so emotional characters, and it really just works so well.
Yeah. You mentioned emotion. Like, this issue starts on such an emotional high. Like, you start off this issue and Joe is like already at her like peak. Like, she is freaking out, trying to figure things out. Like, it just immediately pulls you back into where you were a month ago. Like, oh right, we're here. She needs to figure this out. This is terrifying. This is trippy. This is so. And you mentioned that the vibes of this book are just so good, and that continues here. Where like you start, the emotions are high. You get this vibe, so like all encompassing, and so much of that is the art. I don't know if we can throw enough flowers Marco Finnegan's way. Like, yeah. It is such a gorgeously illustrated book, such a fantastically colored book by Jason Wordie. And this is an issue where I think Tim Daniel and David Andrew do a phenomenal job with the script. Like, so much of Joe's dialogue has so much emotion behind it as she's dealing with her kids and all like the stuff around it. And it leads into, no spoilers, like you said, some actual answers and a really freaking cool ending.
Yes.
That I don't know if we were ever sure was going to happen, but we get a lot here in this issue to make things come together and connect. I'd be very interested to read this as a trade and just get the full experience in one sitting. But yeah, this was a really, really cool issue, and I think it fits for what this book is and what it's been. I think it fits so well as a conclusion.
Oh yeah. Super, super cool. Absolutely awesome. Like you said, something that's going to be really rad to read as a trade as well. Because it's so like atmosphere-y. So like sitting down at night with a single lamp and reading this by that is going to be like immaculate energy.
Yeah. Maybe we'll see if we can get David Andrew back on, like do something with the trade, like get him to like talk us through it or something. I don't know.
Yes.
I'm spitballing, but I think there could be a really cool thing. But
Tim
whoever wants to come on from the team.
Exactly, because we absolutely love this book.
Yeah, but getting to actually talk to them about like the full encompassing thing now that it's happened, I would really love to.
Yes.
Especially because Tim and David were both kind of like teasing us throughout about whether or not we were going to get answers to some of our questions. And now that we do, I want to talk to them about it.
Now that we have answers, I have more questions.
I have more questions. Your little, hinting comments and teasing stuff like.
Well, great book. Great conclusion to a book that we've enjoyed so much. But that's also going to take us to a conclusion on the pull list rec, which means it's time for us to decide what our pull list recs for the week are. As a reminder to
the true pull list rec.
Yes. From the pull list reviews to the pull list rec.
Yeah.
As a reminder to the folks at home, we've changed it up a little bit. We have decided that the pull list rec is going to be a bit more selective now, because we love comic books, we love recommending comic books, but we want to make sure that we are giving you the cream of the crop every week.
Yes.
So Jay and I each have, unbeknownst to the other, chosen a pull list rec, and we will put those forward now to give you just the one or two books, depending if we choose the same thing, that we really think that you need to be picking up next week. Jay.
Yes.
Do you want to start us off?
I'll start us off. I was going back and forth, weirdly, pretty much between the three Marvel books of the.
They were all pretty dark.
They were all fantastic, and I, weirdly was kind of landing on both Hickman books as my like. I was like,
Hickman's insane.
which
He's
Hickman book? But I'm gonna tilt mainly because of my personal preferences for like the type of books that I enjoy toward Wolverine Revenge as my official pull list rec of the week. I already gushed about this a ton, but it really is just what happens when you take a writer at the top of his game and an artist at the top of his game, and you put them together with one of the biggest characters in comics, and you let them go nuts. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Wolverine Revenge is my recommendation.
All right, my rec for the week is not Wolverine, so we get two this week.
Okay, we get two.
Yeah.
We get two.
I am such a sucker for the concept of this book, and I think that it's executed itself really, really well.
I know where you're going to here now.
I'm actually giving my pull list rec this week to Dark Knights of Steel Allwinter. I really, really
so actually
love...
3 books kind of this week.
Fair enough, yeah, because it was one of our twofers this week. But yeah, I think that the way that they are making Deathstroke into this Viking, I think that the story they're setting up with him and Alec, I believe is the kid's name, I think that that's going to turn into a real good, like, kind of Last of Us, God of War. There's another really iconic one that I'm Logan type thing where it's like the, you know, gruff old motherfucker and the savior of the world in his care, and I think that's going to be a really, really fun ride to be on. And on top of that, it's swords and sorcery shit, which I love so much.
Very fair.
Yeah, but with those recs, yeah.
Those are 2 official pull list recs of the week. Join us next week. We'll talk at the end of the episode about what books will actually be up next week. But we'll have another 2 pull list recs, or 1 if we're the same, but next week. But without further ado, where are we heading from here, Katie?
We're heading to the Creator Corner. All right. Alrighty. Here we are in the Creator Corner, where we sit back, relax, talk about writing, talk about the industry, talk about our processes, all that good stuff. This week is going to be a dialogue between the two of us on...
A
dialogue.
Nice.
You know, as script writers, there are many factors that we are contributing to when it comes to comics, from something as mundane as the number of panels on a page to something as minute as, you know, what direction a character is facing. Right. Of course, you know, artists can take their liberties where they will, but generally we're kind of the first pitch for what's happening on any given page. But I think the part that people recognize the most as the writer's job is what the characters are saying, the actual physical words on the page.
Yep.
Because letters, phenomenal work. Most of the time, that's not going to involve changing the words on the page, unless you're lettering your own stuff. Dialogue is the most visible part of a writer's job. And I would argue one of the most important parts, because it really determines so much about what people are able to pick up about your characters, about who they are. With the books that we read this week, Daredevil, we get a lot of great captioning, which I'm kind of including in dialogue here.
I assumed we were talking about just on-page text.
Exactly, but I wanted to specify for the folks at home.
Yep.
Daredevil has such good captioning that does great character work. Cullen Bunn, you've talked specifically about his ability to write dialogue, which is
one
totally
of the best
true.
Writers in comics.
We have a lot of faves out here, and I would like to hear what you've learned from reading them and what you've learned from just developing your own sense of style. So when you're writing dialogue, where do you start?
Yeah, okay, this is such an interesting question. Funnily, something we were talking about when I was looking at your script for something recently.
Yes, it was.
And I'll tell you guys, Katie is a phenomenal on-page text writer, one of her strongest parts of her comics. But filing back,
prose background,
one of the weakest parts of mine when I had first started writing comic books. Something that I really struggled with, to the point that the first job I got, which I think I've talked about before a little bit, didn't end up being published. One of the actual things that I was told as I was putting the script together was, I'm going to go in and rewrite a lot of the dialogue. You can write the script, but I'll go in and rewrite a lot of the dialogue, because that was where I was at when I was just starting to write comics. But here's one of the great things about dialogue. You're going to get better at it just from writing comic books, because it is the biggest, I think, point of just improvement through doing. You'll get more comfortable, and improvement through reading. Reading and writing is going to improve it a ton. But to kind of answer your actual question here about the process. It's very important to, I think, have like two minds when you're writing a comic book script. Everything that people will not read and everything that people will actually read. Outside of like people, I mean the audience, not your artist. Panel descriptions are for your artist. That is your audience. You're writing for the artist. Captions, dialogue, you are writing for the actual audience, for the person who's going to be reading the comic book. So there's a big kind of difference there in how you approach it.
He's building this up because he's about to roast my ass.
I wasn't. Do you want me to? I can.
Look, it's in every script that he reads of mine.
There are people like Katie who are some of the best on-page text writers, which, if they write the two similarly, can hurt their panel writing because it will come off too flowery, too difficult for the artist to actually conceptualize into
too metaphorical
on-page. Yeah, too metaphorical. But then conversely, you can absolutely get into, which I have at various points, get into the rut of like writing your description so much to the point that your dialogue starts to feel very like samey. All your characters will sound like the same person. All your stuff like that. Your captions will sound too like robotic almost.
Informative.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to really be able to, and this is actually why you want to insight into my process. I do not write the two at the same time. I write all of my dialogue and on-page text before I write panel descriptions. I will block out kind of as I'm going. Sometimes I'll write a little something like I'll write like punch, or like just a quick word to be like, this is what's happening in this panel. But I'll go through and just block out like the dialogue and the captions happening on every page. This is after I've outlined, so I know like the general idea of what's going on. But I go out and I do all that to get the pages up, and then I'll go back and write panel descriptions. And I'm in my much more like artistic mind when I'm writing the dialogue and the captions. And I'm coming up with the story and changing things there. And then when I get to the descriptions, I kind of switch a little bit to a more like informative explaining mindset to how I'm writing that.
What's so funny to me is I do the exact opposite. I write all of my panel descriptions first, and then I fill in my dialogue.
I think a lot of people do that.
It's just so funny to me listen to you say that, I think that you generally have better panel descriptions than I do, because you're also so good at like capturing action in. You are incredibly good at putting action into words that can then be made into images. And so to hear that both of us kind of go through our like imaginative state first, where it's like, this is what I'm seeing happen on the page, and for you that comes in through your dialogue, where like, this is where I change what's happening on the page, and for me it's like, no, I need to see what's happening in the scene before I can hear it. That's incredibly funny to me that we have the exact opposite approach.
I think more people do it your way. My way, like I've talked to people about my stuff, and a lot of people think it's really weird. Because like, how are you going through writing dialogue when you don't have it? Because the thing is, like, I have panel descriptions, but like in my head, and I'll know based on the dialogue or like the same. Because like basically every panel is either going to get like a 2-word description or it's going to have dialogue. It's going to have something that like I know why that panel is there. But my issue is if I start writing out descriptions and I like reach the end of a page, and then when I go back to that dialogue, I realize like, oh no, I need more space to get this dialogue out. Or if as I'm going, I realize like, oh no, this page would work better as less panels or more panels. I feel like, one, I'm wasting more time if I have to delete full descriptions to then change things. And super two, I feel like I'm not allowing myself to like flow as well. Descriptions take a lot longer. So when I'm in like that flow and I just want to like get out the vibe of the story, if I'm writing descriptions, I might lose what I'm thinking of for like 2 pages from now. If I'm going dialogue, I'm going fast. I'm going page. This is how it's going. This is how it's looking. This is how it's building. And like sometimes I will sometimes go like, if I can't think of dialogue, because this is my fast pass. I want to go as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So if I can't figure out the line, I'll write like funny line where he makes fun of this person. Or I'll write like a very basic version of the line where it's like, we need to get this thing. And it doesn't have any of like the language of how this character would talk yet. And then I'll go back through and I'll still do the dialogue first, and I'll flush that out. And then I'll go and I'll do the panel description. But yeah, I think a lot more people do it your way because it's probably the better way. But that's
the better way is what works for you.
That's true. But yeah, you do much better with I think I'm gonna turn a question around on you here, because I think that in terms of straight up telling people, I think you are probably the better expert here in dialogue, and especially caption writing. I think your caption writing is phenomenal.
Thank you.
How do you have all your descriptions out now? I've
Yes.
learned, I kind of, maybe assume that, or that you did both at the same time, but you have all your descriptions out now. How do you then approach putting the words on the page? And like, I really particularly want to know about your caption process, like how you figure out captions, because I tend to shy away from captions in general.
Yeah, I love a good caption. Scott Snyder has had too much of an influence on me. Uh, I think that my approach to captions is the big distinction that I had to make when I was kind of moving from prose to comics was that previously, when I would be looking inside of a character's head, it was still that character's like, because everyone when they speak is lying in some way most of the time.
Yeah.
It's like whether they're lying to themselves, to whatever. So in before, I was very much like essentially thought bubbling my captions from like, no, this is what the character is physically thinking. And I think what I learned very quickly is that no, that's not actually what a caption is. And this is actually something that I plucked straight from the very first issue of Scott Snyder's Batman, his Court of Owls arc, that initial sequence where he's doing the Gotham is bit from the newspaper that Batman is monologuing. That's not what Bruce is thinking in an instant. That is taking his mindset and putting that on the page. So the way that captions move so well for me is by taking that character's mindset, and whether or not it's like immediately relevant to the images on the page, that's the function they're serving. They are not there to info dump about the world or be particularly witty or whatever. They're meant to be insightful and grounding for the character themselves. And often, the character's motivations are going to be what is the bones of the plot. So by looking at their mindset, you're looking at the plot itself. And I think that is just super, super important when you're putting captions on, because captions are so unimmersive at times. Like they can really pull you out if you're not using them carefully. And my goal is always to make my captions as immersive as possible. They're drawing you into the story rather than taking you out of it.
So well said. I do think that's kind of the two camps that captions fall into. It's either like, oh, there's all this extra crap on the page I have to read, so I can't be immersed in the story. Mm-hmm. Or it's like, I think talking about Scott Snyder, I think Scott Snyder does a great job of like, a lot of times to like bookend his books with captions, and like they kind of like lead you in to the story. Yes. Like this like slow descent into it. And then they'll like trickle out as you actually get like into the story, which is just such a good. It's not Terra. Like read not Terra.
It's so sophisticated.
And, like, it's how that goes, and then they'll like pop back up at the end to like pull you into like what's going to happen next.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think that you described it phenomenal. Like think about it as the mindset of the character instead of a thought bubble. Which, funnily enough, comics used to use thought bubbles a ton, and before they ended up transitioning into captions instead of.
We saw plenty of that. We have an episode coming up where we our rankings of Teen Titans teens. So we read some 1960s Teen Titans. A lot of thought bubbles going on there.
And I think it was like stuff like like Frank Miller's Daredevil and like Dark Knight Returns and that kind of. I'm giving Frank Miller a lot of credit here. I'm sure there were other people who were doing it too. But
someone has to get the most credit.
Like, they started going to like captions instead of thought bubbles. And if they did the same thing, there'd be no reason that the industry would shift from one to the other. Exactly. So looking at them as like a distinctive, different thing than just thought bubbles for your character, I think is actually really, really important. So I'm glad that you touched on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love putting captions in my stuff. And I think that something like Erica Schultz's Elektra, we've seen in both her Gang War and now in this, she uses a lot of like deeply focused character dialogue, character captioning.
And I think they're incredibly necessary because in both books, she doesn't really have any characters to play off of. She has the villains at a lot of times, but there's nobody else there for her to talk to, for you to be like, oh, how is she feeling? Like, you need the captions to get that.
And the most interesting conflicts that she has are, like you said when we were talking about Daredevil, is the conflicts with herself as opposed to, like, the conflicts with other characters. But to touch on another side of dialogue, which is how you actually write a character to sound like a character as opposed to everyone sounding the same. I know that when I'm writing dialogue, I am very keyed into what my characters sound like kind of going into it. Like when I'm writing, I can hear the way that my characters are speaking, and my hands just kind of like conduit that onto the keyboard. So like the conversation is happening in my brain
Yeah.
as if two people are having it, as opposed to me making very conscious decisions about like word
Yeah.
choice. And that
No,
can clean up later.
it's funny you
Obviously,
say that because I had a conversation with. I'm going to go because I think Tom Waltz had a huge impact on the way that
mm-hmm.
I write dialogue from characters. He said something very similar to me a couple of years ago now, where he was talking to me about it, and he said like to me like the characters all exist in the world in his mind. Like he's like they all constantly exist, even if this character hasn't been there in 20 issues. Like I'm still thinking about where did his life take him before he came back in, and that informs how he talks. They all have to be people. They can't be
Yes.
vehicles for plot. They all have to be people, and they all have to have like lives branched out from this. And he says like they will talk to him because he builds them into this like such a full picture of a world. And this
Mm-hmm.
is he was mainly talking about his long run on IDW. And just bring back all of those characters constantly and juggling that many characters, and it still is prevalent even if you're only juggling 5 characters, whatever. That's simply how it applies to us. And I struggled for a long time writing dialogue until that piece of advice, and I went and I started just looking a lot at his dialogue on the page, and he's so incredibly good at every character. Like you could read me a line of dialogue from an IDW TMNT book, and I think I would probably be able to, like, with 75% accuracy, be able to tell you what character said that, because they are so distinctive in the way that they talk and the way that they build out. And there's certain writers, like Cullen Bunn as well, who I mentioned, who can do stuff like that and put so much personality behind them. And while that might be a level to aspire to, because we're talking about some of the best in the
Yes.
business here, I think you should be aspiring to that. You
Exactly.
should be trying to have every character have this distinctive personality. But the caveat I'll put onto this, in my opinion, is that can't be done cheaply. Which is to say, like, this person's always going to say this word. Like they have the.
This person's gonna
There's
have a
nothing wrong with giving your
catchphrase.
character an accent or a catchphrase or something. Like there's a place, and there's definitely a reason for that, and that can still exist within this. But if the only distinctive thing is like the one character's from the South, so they're saying y'all constantly, and the one character's
Looking at you,
Wolverine,
Rogue.
so they're saying bub constantly, like that doesn't work as well as like, oh no, this character sees things from this, so this character is going to be the one who's constantly bringing up like whether they're in danger because they're worried about them all being in danger, whereas the other character's bringing up like the mission that they have to complete, very like Superman versus Batman type personality thing. Like what they're saying is as important as how they're saying it, if that makes sense.
That is a huge tick. And I want to hit on one more question before we quickly wrap up this creator corner. You mentioned accents, and I am currently writing a script that is like a kind of Wild West type thing, and I keep going back and forth on my dialogue with how much to like phonetically lean into that. What are your thoughts on like doing the kind of FER for fur and throwing the little apostrophes on for wrangling?
I think it's a tough thing. Like I played around with that with a book that I'm working on that it's set in the South, and they're all Southern for the most part. And so I'm like, how much do you lean into that? And I decided that like I'll lean into it for the characters who I think it makes more sense to lean into it, and in the moments where I think it makes sense to lean into it. But I think that it becomes a little bit overwhelming when like there's like 4 words per sentence that all have like cut off letters and stuff, and like, different spellings. I'm like, it makes it feel like this person has the thickest accent you've ever heard when it's like on every word. A little touch here and there is like, oh, they're from here. On every word makes it sound like they're either trying to make fun of that accent or they have such a thick accent that they're like. So I think that the amount you're doing it per sentence comes off a lot as like how thick the accent is, because it's written versus verbal.
Yeah, and I think that brings up an interesting kind of conflict of overdoing it versus consistently doing it. And there's kind of that line of, is it okay that at one point in their sentence they say, having a good time, and then the sentence is, we're having a good time wrangling the cattle. Where do you land on consistency?
I think consistency is less important than style when it comes to like.
That's what I landed on too.
Yeah, because the truth is like acting like, oh, the dialogue isn't consistent because like in this sentence you use having and in this sentence you use haven't. Like accents come across differently at different points, and it's all about emphasis and how you want it to come across to the reader. So yeah, I'm gonna land on rule of cool on that one. Use
I
whatever
think
like
that's a good place to land.
so yeah, that's my opinion. But there's people with very different opinions. I've read books where
Exactly,
like
yeah.
the accents there in every word of every, and it doesn't necessarily ruin it. It's just it's very dependent on the style of the book and how it's being used.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a wonderful Creator Corner. Let's
I
slide on
agree.
over to figure out what we're going to be reading next week and what's to come for the Script Heroes podcast.
Let's do it. Okay, we have reached the conclusion of another Script Heroes episode, but we have way more Script Heroes content on the channel and coming up for all of you. This past Saturday, we did a bonus episode on the Mad Cave series Stargazer, which was a lot of fun.
It was super cool. Great
Right there.
sibling story. As a couple of Noctera stands, I think it scratched that same itch for us.
Absolutely. But we have our main episode, as always, coming up next Wednesday. Katie,
Yes.
what are we going to be pulling for that?
We are going to be pulling Batman Off-World #5. Can you believe it's only on #5? Because it kept getting delayed and moved and stuff.
Yeah, it's been many delays.
We also have Drawing Blood #5. We've got The Hunger in the Dusk Book 2 #2 and Void Rivals #12.
That's right.
But that's not all we have coming up.
That's right.
Coming Saturday, we've got a bonus episode. What are we talking about, Jay?
We are once again going back to the tier list style, which you guys all seem to really enjoy, and we are going to be ranking Teen Titans lineups from throughout history. We're actually going to pull back the curtain, record that right now. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And hopefully we'll see you all on Saturday for that. If not, hopefully we will see you next week. Comic Geeks.